there has been the highly anticipated meeting between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden. Now, many people have opinions on whether this meeting should have happened at all, because a lot of people see, of course, Joe Biden as being a nefarious neocon who has absolutely nothing to offer China. And so, why should Xi Jinping travel all the way to San Francisco, a brutal trip with a 16-hour time difference, to meet with Joe Biden? That's a very good question. In my estimation, this is how China operates. China does everything it can to demonstrate to the world, to demonstrate to its people, and to demonstrate also to the United States that it is a good faith actor on the world stage and it will abide by diplomatic protocol when it is invited to engage in diplomacy. So I don't expect, and by the time this video is seen by others and released outside of a live stream, when more of the general public see this video, the results of the meeting will have likely been been released, and we will likely see not much happening because that is the theme with U.S. China talks of late. There's been a lot of moves made by the United States to reach out to China, and let's be clear here that it's not China, it's not Xi Jinping, it's not Wang Yi, foreign minister, reaching out to the United States saying, please talk to us, please, let's make peace, let's be better friends. Certainly, China wants cooperation and wants peace and wants friendlier relations, but it's been the United States of late reaching out to China, including this latest summit between Xi Jinping and Joe Biden. It was at the United States' invitation. So this summit is being called high stakes by the Western mainstream media. And here's NBC News saying, as Biden and Xi gear up for the high stakes meeting, experts have low expectations. So again, even the Western mainstream media will admit that there isn't much hope for anything to change between the U.S. and China. The past year of U.S.-China relations face obstacles from a spy balloon, aka a weather balloon that the United States spent millions to shoot down in February of 2023, angering China to the point where Xi Jinping was not answering calls all the way up until this moment from Joe Biden, plus a drought in military-to-military communications, which China cut off because the United States was so unwilling to engage with China in good faith. So that's where the Western mainstream media fails to deliver. So it says U.S.-China relations marred by the past year by a series of inflection points have reached one of the tensest periods since 1972, when President Richard Nixon's historic visit to China paved the way for diplomatic relations. Close encounters in the Taiwan Straits, diplomatic spats, they're calling them, hacking and trade, a drought in military-to-military talks, even the lapse of a panda agreement. So this is why they like to talk about U.S.-China relations as kind of a big joke. But all in all, what they're trying to say is that relations have been cold. And so these worsening relations will hang over the meeting between Joe Biden and Xi Jinping, their first in-person meeting in a year. And they caution, U.S. officials say, not to expect markedly improve relations post-meeting. We should keep a low bar, said the Atlantic Council. This is a meeting that's probably much more about symbolism and showing a commitment among both leaders to maintain high-level communications. We're not talking about a long list of outcomes or deliverables, said a senior administration official. The goal here is really about managing competition, preventing the downside of risk and conflict, and ensuring channels of communication are open. It's quite clear that the administration is sober about the likely outcomes of the meeting, says the lovely CSIS, which, as I've said in the past, is a State Department funded think tank. They've been working hard to lower expectations. I think you're just going to see something similar on the Chinese side. So that is what is true. That is very true. But why then, if expectations are so low, why would the United States essentially beg to meet with Xi Jinping? Why? And it's because when they talk about managing risk, what they're really talking about is that the United States economy is incredibly fragile. And here's the AP saying so. that a fragile global economy, they say, but really what they're talking about is the US economy, is at stake as US and China seek to cool tensions at the APEC summit. So the US and China are two global economic heavyweights, and they produce more than 40% of the goods and services in the world. When Washington and Beijing do economic battle, and as they have for 5 years running, the rest of the world suffers too. And when they hold a rare high-level summit, which has happened, it can have global consequences. So essentially, what this is admitting to is that the global economy is in bad shape, and that is bad for Joe Biden. That is why Joe Biden reached out to Xi Jinping, because the United States wants, and this is what they'll never say. You'll never hear the Western mainstream media say this, so I don't bother to look for this. The Biden administration reached out to Xi Jinping, as it has been reaching out to Chinese officials over the course of the last, let's say, 6 or so months since the early summer, end of the spring of 2023. The reason why they've been doing it is because Joe Biden's administration is in big trouble. The world economy is not doing well. The US economy, while it's kind of sailing on artificial clouds because of how it's treated Europe, it doesn't mean that the United States doesn't have serious pitfalls in its economy that are affecting real people and affecting the administration's favorability ratings, which have been quite low in the United States. And the Biden administration has not achieved a single foreign policy achievement in its almost 4 years now in office, in its first term in office. And that is a big deal. Every single US president requires a signature foreign policy achievement, whether myth or reality. You had Donald Trump go after many of them, and for better or for worse, given the conflict inside of Washington, attempted to do so with the DPRK, attempted to do so with Afghanistan, with Syria. Didn't really achieve much with any of them, but got to appear to achieve something, right? Obama administration had the Iran nuclear deal, which it could claim was a huge step in the right direction toward containing Iranian nuclear weapons programs, which never existed, as well as moving toward peace. So each presidential administration requires this in order to maintain the legitimacy of the United States as a war machine and the presidency as the legitimate and rightful leader of that war machine. So they're reaching out to China. Joe Biden is reaching out to China because they need China to essentially stabilize the United States. Joe Biden is asking China at the summit, can you help the United States, as it did like in 2008? Can you help the United States remain afloat as the world is facing crises of our making? And what Xi Jinping is going to say is China is going to do what's best for China, and China is also going to do what's best for world economic stability, which also is best for China. And that is how the meeting will go when it comes to economic terms. And perhaps that will benefit the United States, and perhaps it will not. But nothing concrete will occur. So that is what the United States is seeking from China at this summit. It's not peace, it's not more cooperation. Managing risk and conflict and competition, all that means is that the United States wants to continue to do what it's doing and ultimately benefit in the end. And so that's why there have been a lot of people asking me, why would Xi Jinping go? Well, Xi Jinping at the G20 summit, the last time that Xi Jinping met with Joe Biden in 2022, the G20 summit in Bali, he gave a warning to the Biden administration and Joe Biden directly, saying that the United States needs to match its words with actions for anything to change. And that warning was never heeded. The United States continued its reckless trade war on China. It increased the number of sanctions on China's tech industry, adding export bans and adding other kinds of investment bans, which are coming into effect as we speak, all of which point to an economic war, which ultimately hurts the United States more because when Gina Raimondo came earlier in the fall, she came to China. She came and talked a really nice game and then left completely shocked that China had released a Huawei phone that had all of the advanced chips that the United States was trying to keep China from getting. So, this is the reality of the situation that the United States needs China more than China needs the United States at this point. And so I'm going to show you just all the various ways that that is true. How no matter what happens, no matter you're going to, over and over and over again, China gives warnings to the United States. And these warnings are more so advice to the United States of what would be best for the United States. It's gotten to the point where the United States leadership is so corrupt, so hawkish, so inept, and so self interested in aims that will never be achieved. Mind you, they're never going to overthrow China or destabilize China. They're not going to do it to Russia either. That these countries are not just nuclear armed, but they are stable. So to think that China and Russia too are going to be bullied in the same way as it has bullied other countries that were a lot less capable, that were unable to defend themselves in a manner against the US's military prowess, those days are gone. And if they can't stabilize the situation in Palestine for the benefit of their attack dog Israel, if they can't get to a point of victory in Ukraine for their proxy, Zelensky, who's to say that they can actually win any kind of conflict with China? They can't. And the United States, I believe, is increasingly aware of this because the writing is on the wall. There's uh, uh, so many examples of this. The United States is trying to economically undermine China. It's trying to slow its growth. Well, China is set to grow 2 to 3 times larger than the United States this year and 4 to 5 times larger than China in real terms, in GDP terms. So here you have the Global Times reporting that China is confident to achieve 5% GDP growth rate in 2023 as the economy rebound continues. China has full confidence in achieving its stated GDP annual growth rate of 5%, with economic growth of 5.2% in the first 3 quarters, setting the solid foundation. So China economically doesn't look like it's being contained. Not only is China's economy not being contained, not only is it not being contained, but China is able to pursue, and this is the thing about China, and a friend and co-guest on Jing Li's channel, which I did a video on, which should be released any minute now. We talked about these developments, and he made the point. His name is Jason Smith. He made the point that China oftentimes outdoes the goals that it sets, that it actually sets its goals kind of back a bit, undersells what it can do, and then goes beyond those goals. While the United States oversells what it can do, right? Bring democracy to the Middle East, contain China, and then fall well short. So here is some of what I am talking about. You have China, despite this US campaign to contain it, opening up railways in Bangladesh. Chinese built railway opens via Bangladesh's Padma Bridge. The first train of the Padma Bridge railing project carrying Bangladeshi Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina departed from a station on the outskirts of the capital of Dhaka on Tuesday, marking a formal opening of the first section of the largest railway in the country. The PBRLP, a significant project under the Belt and Road Initiative in Bangladesh, was built by the China Railway Group Limited and funded by the Export-Import Bank of China. The first section of the railway link is about 80 kilometers long and runs from Dhaka to Bangar. It's a day of fulfilling the dream across the Padmar River by train. We have a target to link Bangladesh's railway with the Trans-Asian Railway, and we are working to this end," said Hasina, the prime minister. So it employed this project 10,000 local workers at the peak of its construction and trained 20,000 railway construction workers for Bangladesh. So tangible benefits, all right? That's what China can do amid a Cold War that the United States is waging. And it goes on and on and on. Here are just some recent stories. The CPEC, so the China Pakistan Economic Corridor, empowers women, boosts education, and promotes economic growth in Pakistan. So it's a longer story talking about how regular, ordinary people in Pakistan are benefiting from China's China Pakistan Economic Corridor. So, launched in 2013, the China Pakistan Economic Corridor, which is a flagship project under the Belt and Road Initiative, is a corridor linking Pakistan's southwest Gwadar port with Kashgar in the northwest to in northwest China's Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, highlighting energy transport and industrial cooperation. Khatun is now a professional truck driver, so this is a person, an ordinary person, at the CPEC's Tar Coal Block 2 Coal Electricity Integration Project. Her path for employment has not only improved her life, but profoundly impacted her entire family, which now enjoys a higher standard of living, improved education, access, better food quality, and a newfound sense of happiness. Driving a mighty dump truck professionally and making good money out of it by a woman who has never ridden a bicycle in her lifetime was implausible. No one except the Chinese company believed I could do it, said Khatun. The project, built by China Machinery Engineering Corporation, has a major power plant under CPSC in Pakistan to help the country meet its electricity demands by using locally available coal. There are several dozen women at work, and CPEC illuminated our lives with colors of happiness and prosperity. And here you have a photo from back in April 2023 showing staff members and Chinese workers of the Tar Coal Block 2 Electricity Integration Project posing for a group photo at a dinner celebrating Eid al-Fitr in the Tar Desert in Pakistan's southwest Sindh province. So I'm probably butchering all that, but here you have the image. So I can go on and on and on. China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, improving people's lives in Pakistan. This is amid what the United States is doing. It doesn't seem like the United States is really containing China if China is able to come to the aid of others in this way. So this goes on and on and on, all right? And I wrote an article for the Global Times about what U.S. maneuvers to stabilize China ties really mean. And I talked about how these maneuvers are to undermine all of this, right? The United States doesn't have any real hope or plans for genuine diplomacy. The United States is looking for a pressure release valve on the crises that it currently is managing. This is why Xi Jinping sent the warning that the United States needs to match words with actions. What does that mean? It means China is very well aware that the United States has no real interest in its um, backing up its talk with real concerted action that would change the policy course of the United States. And I talk about how, despite the Xi Jinping and Joe Biden meeting, that there's going to have to be a reckoning with the fact that the Biden administration maintains Trump era trade war tariffs, maintains and expands on sanctions on China's tech sector, and which has meant enacting an export ban and an investment ban on key Chinese economic sectors, especially in tech. Furthermore, China has to remind the United States over and over and over again. This is the big one. This is probably the issue that is really what is at the heart of why the United States is not able to come to any kind of policy course change with China, despite talking to China, despite Joe Biden begging for a meeting with Xi Jinping. And the reason for this is that the United States um, is fomenting a proxy war, is building a proxy war against China in Taiwan. So the United States has been using, as I say here in the article, the FMF program, which the BBC said is a part of the US quietly arming Taiwan to the teeth through the FMF Foreign Military Finance Program, which is what the Biden administration is using to arm Ukraine, which doesn't really signal that the United States is coming to any kind of reckoning with the fact that it has signed 3 joint communiques with China around respecting the One China principle, meaning that Taiwan is part of China legally and under international law. That is also the case. And without respecting that, that is essentially breaking off diplomatic ties with China. It is the beginning, the rudiments of destroying the entirety of the normalization process. Meaning what? When you destroy normalization with a country, that is essentially declaring war with that country. You don't break off diplomatic ties just because it's, this isn't high school. You're not breaking off diplomatic ties just because you don't like what they're doing, right? Oh, I don't like what they're wearing or how they're dressing or how they're, whatever. No, when you break off diplomatic ties to this degree, what this indicates is war. This indicates that you're at war. Look at who the United States is not normal with, for example, Venezuela. For how long has Venezuela been not recognized? The government of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, the president. It's been many years where they tried to install a puppet Juan Guaido. That failed, but nonetheless, there's still not a recognition of Maduro from the United States. And we can go on and on and on. So, Russia and the United States, far from having normal relations, and they're at war in many respects. So the United States is building up toward war with China through Taiwan. And now it's mired in these geopolitical crises, which I review. And so the United States is looking to, one, with these so-called diplomatic meetings with China, it's not looking to engage in diplomacy. It is looking to ease pressure off of the Biden administration and the United States political class as a whole. It's trying to glean some economic benefit from China to help steer the rocky ship of the global economy. The United States does not want to look like it is wrecking the global economy, which it is. It's the United States that's creating the chaos. It's the United States that slapped the sanctions on Russia. It's the United States that fomented the proxy war, which sank confidence in many respects. And it's the United States that ended up destroying what was left of Europe's industry and fueled this inflation crisis and what right now is a permanent economic crisis in Europe in many countries, including Germany. So it has been the United States that has been fueling this instability, and now it's looking to China to help stabilize the situation. And the same goes for the geopolitical crises. How many times have you heard Joe Biden and the United States administration say, hey, could you please help us with Russia? Could you please help us come to some kind of point where Russia will stop what it's doing? Right? That's basically the United States saying, hey, we don't have any responsibility for this thing. We want China. Hey, China, you claim you're a big power. Why don't you go act like it? It's completely and utterly disrespectful. They've been doing this at all levels. They've done this with the Israel assault on Gaza. They've said, China, can you get Iran to make sure that none of the axis of resistance comes to the aid of Palestine so Israel can just continue killing all those Palestinians? And what has China done every single time? And this is what China will do with the Xi Biden meeting. And before, during, and after, right? It doesn't change. This is what's important about this meeting. Nothing changes on the Chinese side. China does over and over again, says, we're adhering to international law. Here are the terms that we are going to adhere to. We'll go to the UN Security Council. We will attempt to use it for some good. And of course, the United States blocks that. It blocks China's attempt, Russia's attempt, which Russia put forth and China supported a real ceasefire agreement. The United States rejected it out of hand. China, during the Ukraine crisis, has been not just strengthening ties with Russia, maintaining ties with Ukraine, and positioning itself to be a real mediator for a negotiated settlement that would meet the interests, hopefully, of all parties. But we know that there will be a loser and a victor in that war. But nonetheless, China's positioned itself to act as a mediator if such a thing could actually transpire. But what did the United States do with its NATO vassals and EU vassals? It said, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to allow that. So the United States is essentially, and Joe Biden, of course, is thinking quite selfishly, narrowly. It's thinking about US interests and US interests only. And China is very much aware of this, which is why you're likely going to see in the readout after this meeting, you're likely going to see Xi Jinping. Well, it will come out of China's foreign ministry. You're going to see a statement that says, I can guarantee this, that the statement will say all of the good rhetoric, right? This was a good moment, symbolic. It means relations hopefully will go on the right track. And it will say the United States needs to match words with actions. Again, the entirety of the Chinese media is saying this. Every single op-ed you find in the Global Times and CGTN editorial, every report on this, they all say the same thing, that every expert, every academic, everyone studying this issue, they're all saying the United States, regardless of its talk, regardless of how symbolically and how much meaning this could have towards stabilizing relations, ultimately is responsible for improving relations by walking the walk and not just talking the talk. Essentially, that's what China has said from the very beginning. And nothing's going to change just because Xi Jinping decided to fly thousands of miles across the world in order to meet with Joe Biden in the United States. It's an incredible gesture. Honestly, it's not like I don't have it's not like I don't disagree. I disagree with those who are quite maybe bamboozled by why China would do such a thing when it's been treated in this way by the United States. But China always takes the high road. China does not play into the uh, 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 conflict escalator of the United States, and it never will. It will only defend itself when it's absolutely necessary. And as I've shown, from the economic growth to the growth in the Belt and Road Initiative to its ability to handle the sanctions and its ability to be resilient amid these attacks, China doesn't have to. Um, it doesn't have to play into the conflict escalator. It doesn't have to thump its chest toward the United States. No, because China understands that time is on its side. China understands that the United States has no possibility of waging a successful war on the Taiwan Straits. None. The United States does that, it will be over for its aim to separate Taiwan from China. It'll be over for the US position really in the region because China will easily reunify Taiwan to China fully and by force. That is the red line. And China is capable of doing it. It's shown it many times. After Pelosi visited, after McCarthy visited, there were military drills that showed that China can immediately surround and blockade the island, cut it off from every single point of assistance from the United States. If the United States decides it's going to fly in its aircraft carriers and begin to wage a sea and air war, China has all the tools at its disposal to start one by one downing and blowing up those aircraft carriers, those fighter jets. It has the capabilities, just like Russia had all the capabilities to defeat NATO's arsenal. So, in effect, the United States, its time is up. This is the end. There's no diplomacy, there's no progress. There's only a slow and at times rapid descent into second, third, fourth, and last place in the world as a hegemon that doesn't have any legitimacy anymore. It will continue to mire itself in geopolitical crises. It will continue to try to fight off inevitable economic crises, and it will be up to the people of the world. It will be up to the multipolar world, the governments and the people as a part of it, to chart a new course. It'll be up to the people in the West, the real people in the West, ordinary people in the West, the collective West, to chart a new course. And the Biden administration is on borrowed time. It is mummified. It is over in many respects. It's unclear whether there's any possibility for a second Biden term, but none of that matters, because what matters is that this foreign policy establishment and essentially the ruling elite that charts all policy in the United States is hell bent on a war, an eventual war with China, an eventual war with Russia. And it's going to be up to the people to stop all of this, to stop the massacres in Gaza, stop the proxy war in Ukraine, to stop this Cold War in Russia and China, and to stop the utter insufferable conditions that people all over the world, including in the collective West, have to experience because of the uh, 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 the rampant exploitation and endless war that their leaders and the corporate masters their leaders work for put them under.
Thank you for tuning in to my latest video. I appreciate all of your support. This channel, however, needs your help. I am seeking to make this channel more sustainable in the long term and upgrade necessary equipment to ensure that this work continues onward and makes progress to give you all of the geopolitical analysis that you all deserve. For that reason, I'm asking you to become a member of my Patreon community at patreon.com/DannyDhaiphong. You can find that link in the video description or in the pinned comment below. For whatever amount you choose to give, just know you are supporting independent media that you can't find anywhere else. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the next video.